We call to order a regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission on Wednesday, June 17th. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Let the record show that all commissioners are present. Thank you very much. Some who flew in early this morning and are here as a courtesy to the chairperson. I would like a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission held on May 20th, 2009. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
I have a motion.
Second.
And I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. The ayes have it, 7-0. Public comments there are no people from the public, but however, if there were some, we'd ask you to fill out a card so that we know exactly who you are and you can speak on anything not on the agenda item. Since there are no public present, we will move on to disclosure of ex parte communications. Seeing no ex parte communications, I'll move on to the consent agenda. We have two items on the consent agenda. Case 0922000004, a zoning ordinance text amendment, Article 3 of Planned Area Development, that staff is recommending that the public hearing be continued to July 15th meeting of the Planning Commission. A second case, case 07200-00016, the Madera rezone. I'm going to make a correction to the agenda. This is a request by the applicant to continue this case to the August 19th, 2009 Planning Commission meeting. Does any commissioner want to have any items pulled, or can I get a vote on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I continue to have a conflict on the Madera case, so I won't be voting on the consent.
Okay. That's fine. We'll leave it at that. Commissioner Schlosser will not be voting. All those in favor, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda as it stands, please?
I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Thank you very much. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, the ayes have it. This is a 6-0 vote with Commissioner Schlosser abstaining. All right. We're now moving to old business, case 0922000003, zoning text amendment, Article 3, commercial and industrial zoning districts, a public hearing, and I'm going to open the public hearing, and I believe that senior planning manager, planning manager, Mr. Coons is going to take over for Karen, who got the night off, right?
She's not feeling well.
Okay. Well, we're sorry to hear about that.
Mr. Chairman, very briefly, this is, as you indicated, a text amendment to Article 3, the commercial and industrial zoning districts, along the lines with the other amendments. This is to a housekeeping comprehensive update to improve the organization and clarity for the zoning ordinance. In the commercial and industrial districts in Article 3, the primary changes are creation of use matrix, as we've discussed before, rather than the listing of uses, identification of some uses are permitted with conditions and grouping those in one section, which will be in Article 4 that will come to you later. We're also deleting the central business district zone with the PADs that have been approved for all four quadrants for the city center area. That zoning district is really obsolete. We're adding a Commerce Park district. Currently, we have just an I-1 and an I-2 light industrial and general industrial districts, and there's a need for something in between. The Commerce Park district will allow the typical I-1 uses, but also allow some heavy commercial uses such as auto and motorcycle repair. Also allow some retail uses that are conducted in conjunction with those industrial uses. And we're allowing a number of commercial and industrial land use definitions to go along with the use matrix. The Planning Commission has discussed this amendment twice, a work session on April 15th and at your hearing on May 20th. May 20th, we continued it to this date. The discussion at the last meeting focused on some of the characteristic descriptions we had in the draft at that time for warehousing, distribution, and storage type uses. And the language that we had relative to describing those uses relative to heavy truck volume or outdoor storage, and whether or not those terms would be too subjective for the ordinance. We looked at that further, made some revisions. What we've actually done is we've deleted those descriptions, the characteristic descriptions relative to heavy truck volume and outdoor, because we really couldn't define them. In place of that, what we did is added to the draft ordinance more development standards related to the industrial districts, specifically to allow the ability to review by staff the specific nature of that industrial proposal, regards to where the loading facilities were, the bay doors not facing residential, things of that nature. If I may, maybe to describe the changes more specifically in that regards, in the draft amendment that we forwarded to you, for example, in the development standards, there's provision that says there's normally a 10-foot wide landscape buffer. And then the ordinance says to buffer permitted outdoor industrial uses and activities, a landscape buffer wider than 10 feet with additional trees may be required during the site plan review process. Similarly, to buffer permitted outdoor industrial uses and activities, a wall higher than the normal 6 feet may be required. There's also provisions relative to building setback. And then there's a provision that says all principal accessory industrial buildings incorporating truck bay loading and unloading facilities shall orient the truck bays away from adjacent residential. Basically, a number of different development standards that says on a case-by-case basis how they orient the facility in relationship to the adjoining residential. There may be required additional buffering or additional building setbacks through the site plan review process, recognizing that a 5-acre industrial building with some warehousing is a lot different than a 20-acre industrial site with 400,000 square feet of distribution warehousing with a lot of trucks that may require greater buffering. Mr. Chairman, that summarizes where we're at with this. I guess the only other thing to say is in the review process, Suncor submitted a number of questions and concerns and recommended changes in the ordinance. We've worked through those with Suncor, made a number of changes, and have responded to those items, and we believe that they're satisfied with the current revisions.
Questions of staff? Questions? Okay, I have two quick ones. On the commercial district standards, where if you look at the matrix, I believe on page 3-5, we have no setbacks for a public facilities district. Can you elaborate on, I guess, why a public facilities district is, why the government's getting a better deal than is exempt from these restrictions or the setbacks?
Mr. Chairman, I guess my first response, and I'm not sure if it's going to answer your question, but the current ordinance has no setback requirement. So we're basically suggesting no change. Steve, am I correct?
Okay, I'll accept that. That's fine. Okay, next question is on section, I believe it's item 14 on the commercial of section. All right, let me find this. I think it's development B, development standards for commercial districts. I think I have this right. Item 14,
Yeah.
it talks about backflow valves, utility boxes, and other similar fixtures shall be painted to match the main buildings on site or to match surrounding landscape. This is more a philosophical question or a question about past practices, but when I see some of these, we've developed a lot, there's been a lot of development here, and you see a lot of these big valves and they're painted blue or purple or whatever. I'm sure they're painted that color for some technical reason.
Not that Mr. Chairman, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So are they going to be beige? You know how I hate beige.
Well, they'd be painted to match in generally what's surrounding it. And if there is a beige screen wall that's adjacent to it, yes, it would. Otherwise, it would be some neutral color.
Is it purple like supposed to be reclaimed water or something?
That's not entirely correct. I think if it's, boy, that's got a lot of feedback there. I think if it's a purple facility, it's for gray water. I think reclaimed water. So I think there is some meaning to those colors.
So are we going to, we're not going to deny the meaning, and I've always saw, blue as fresh water, potable water, and.
Are you referring to the backflow prevention, large devices, those big, huge things that you see out in front of commercial? Those are backflow prevention.
But I'm saying there's many other types of
there's
valves that we'll see coming, like an 8-inch pipe coming out of the ground in two places, and there'll be a valve there, and it'll be painted blue or something like that. Does this apply, or where are we on this?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, to my knowledge, there is no specific regulations that govern that it has to be a certain color. Relative to gray water, there is some requirements relative to how you paint the pipes relative to that. I don't know if it applies to backflow preventers. It's not. I believe it's
But
just.
I mean, are they going to be, is that going to be dumped into this appearance section, or do we need to have a?
Well, you raised something that we'll investigate it further.
Can we do some research on it, and then I'll leave it?
I don't believe it is. Our current practice is through the design review process, we try to get those very large backflow because they can be 4 feet high at times and wider than this table, particularly when you get to the 3-4 inch valves. Through practice, we try to get those put behind screen walls,
Right.
or screened by landscaping. One other way is if not doing those, then to be painted to match and blend, rather than having the bright colors. But we will research that further, make sure we're on the right track before we take this forward.
Okay, that's a good answer. Thank you. Any other questions? All right, seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the zoning text amendment Article 3 as presented by staff with the idea that there will be additional research before it goes to council?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend approval of case 09-220-00003, the zoning ordinance text amendment, Article 3, commercial and industrial zoning districts with the research request/requirement.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion. Can I have a second, please? I have a motion and I have a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it, 7-0. Okay, moving on to our next item of business, which is a work session on zoning text amendments number 5, and Article 5, property improvement standards, and Article 8, general provisions. Ms. Wilkin will be leading us in the discussion.
Thank you, Chairman Gelzer, members of the Commission. First on Article 5. Article 5 is currently titled the Property Improvement Standards, and the largest change we're proposing for this article is to retitle it the Landscape Improvements article. Currently, there's regulations on landscaping, walls and fences, and pools and spas. Most cities do have a separate landscaping article in their zoning ordinances, and it does make it a bit cumbersome to try and find the landscaping standards when they're not their own separate article. So we will be moving the walls and fences and the pools and spas regulations to Article 8, so then the landscaping provisions become the standalone article, Article 5. We also reorganized the landscape provisions just so that they flow a little better, so it kind of goes through the process, the purpose, to the plans, to the maintenance of the landscaping. There weren't many regulatory changes within the article. The ones that were changed were basically changing to our current practice and policy. Just a few things to point out. One is city maintenance. We clarified that the city will only be responsible for maintaining landscape areas that are within the median, and that is consistent with current policy. We're just getting it into the zoning ordinance. Also, we made sure that basically the zoning ordinance has a standard for how many landscape planters there are in a parking area. I believe the zoning ordinance currently says you need one for every 15 spaces, but our design guidelines said one for every 12 spaces, so we just made the zoning ordinance match up with our design guidelines, which is what we've been implementing. And finally, we also changed the tree size in our buffer areas between residential and non-residential uses. Currently, we require that in those buffer areas, every other tree is a 24-inch box, where the others can be a 15-gallon, and we're now going to require that all trees in those buffer areas are going to be 24-inch box to provide more adequate buffering between residential and non-residential areas. So those are the major changes proposed for Article 5. So I'll go ahead and pause here so you can ask questions about Article 5.
Any questions of staff on Article 5 on landscaping? Seeing none, proceed on with Article 8. This will come back as a public hearing at our next meeting, or?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Katie.
Article 8 is our general provisions article, and it currently includes the general requirements section, which is kind of the miscellaneous items that pertain to all zoning ordinance or supplement regulations within other parts of the zoning ordinance. It also contains regulations for accessory buildings and some other miscellaneous items such as height and hazardous materials. As I said previously, we're moving the walls and fences and pools and spas regulations into this article. And the biggest thing that's happened to this article is we've reorganized it to try and make it a little more user-friendly so it's easier to find the regulations that are in there and make it flow a little bit better. We've also revised the accessory structures a little bit. The accessory structures section was a little outdated. We haven't made really any regulatory changes. It's more on the consistency in language. You know, we had casitas and accessory dwelling units, and so we've just kind of tightened that language up and clarified some of those regulations. And that's all I have to address tonight, so I can take any questions or comments you have on Article 8.
Yeah, well done.
Questions of staff? I have a question. On the section 8-2-3, the donation drop-off boxes, is this what we previously used when we approved the policy of donation drop-off boxes being allowed in retail parking lots, and we implemented a policy? Does the text of this zoning ordinance follow that policy?
Yes, you recently saw this within the last year and approved this donation drop-off bin text amendment. And as you can see, the only changes made to it were some capitalization changes, but otherwise, it's what you approved.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Williams.
I have a question about that, too. Do we need to add a line in about required frequency of collection?
Did we do that? I thought that was the responsibility of
The property owner?
the property owner to make sure that the area was
Okay.
policed and.
Thank you.
Did I remember that correctly, Katie?
Yes, it is up to the property owner, and we do have language in there about it being clean and clear, and so that would tie into frequency of collection, but we haven't,
And then
I don't think, stated an
And then on the policy, it says there has to be phone numbers of both the collection agency and the property owner and those kinds of things on
That's
the box, right?
Yes, that is in
Okay.
there.
Does that, do you think
Yeah, I
that
remember that,
covers?
yeah.
Okay.
I'm fine.
Other questions? Okay, good job, Katie. I'm going to close the work session since there is no one from the public here to ask a question or two. And staff communications.
I don't have anything, Mr. Chairman, unless you have some questions of staff.
You're here. We're happy. And on
We're happy
that,
to be here, too.
I bet you are.
and on that note, I will say nothing other than there is excitement at Monday night's upcoming council meeting. you know, be there or be square. And on that note, a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Accepted.